Hello. Welcome to Speaking of Tea podcast. This is my episode 2 in actuality, besides the first one that was like a monologue about poetry. Hello, and welcome to the second episode of this new podcast called Speaking of Tea. Well, this is the first episode where it actually has a name. The other one that I did, it was just to hop right in and get things going and see how it feels. And it felt right. It certainly felt right. So then I spent the next day trying to figure out what it's going to be called. And decided to call it Speaking of Tea because it is definitely going to be a podcast that is me discussing tea and having conversations over tea. So, um, simple background. And it's also really something I would just say in general in life. Speaking of tea. So, yeah, that's I'm excited today to share an oracle reading and talk a little bit about the tea that I'm drinking and some poetry and then whatever else comes up because that's going to be the fun natural flow of this podcast. Right now, I am drinking some tea from a puer, however you want to say it. And this one I've had for a little while, but it's also an aged one from 2013, and it's called like a bird's nest tea. And so a lot of pour cakes, they're shaped like discs, sort of like looks like a frisbee. We call them cakes. But there's another style of in shaping the leaves, and it's kind of look like a bird's nest or like a cap of a mushroom. Yeah, this one it's definitely can air more bitter. It always depends on how you're steeping it. But there's something almost a bit of a spice about it. Good start. Mm, tangy, almost kind of tangy. Yeah, I'm about 3 steeps in or so with this one. Anyway, I'm gonna hop into a oracle card reading. I actually already shuffled and drew this card for myself earlier, but I thought I would share it. So the one that I'm reading out of right now is the Rose Oracle. It's a lovely deck that has all the cards have something to do with the rose plant, and it's really connects you to nature and with seasons and sort of where you're at in your emotional world. Eh, um, yeah, it's just a really lovely one. So the one that I pulled is called After the Rain, and it's actually the very first card in um in the deck. I mean, they're alphabetically ordered inside of the guidebook, but it's so special to pull the very first one. So this one, After the Rain, it has a woman like sort of sort of like walking on water. Maybe she's just at the edge of a beach and there's a rainbow around her. There's light shining in from behind. Her face is up. She's looks like she's receiving the water as cleansing. And so silver lining, relief, hope, mercy, it's over, acceptance. So here's the reading. There's something very special and sacred about the moment after it stops raining. The atmosphere has released all that it was holding, and in turn, the earth has been cleansed, replenished, and nourished. It's a similar feeling to the moment after we stop crying. As those salty, healing waters fall, they activate oxytocin and endorphins, which create a shift in how we feel. What was once overwhelming now seems possible, and while we may not know it consciously, noticeable growth will soon follow. After the Rains is all about hope, healing, beginnings, and endings. Emotions are soothed, broken hearts are on the mend, times of trial are over. Mercy can be felt. There's a moment of relief. A new, encouraging silver lining can now be made out in the distance. What's been challenging and difficult has or is about to ease up. If you're going through a challenging time, this card is here to assure you that things are about to ease. You've been through the worst of it, and now hope is here. These past weeks, months, or even years haven't been straightforward. They've likely asked you to dig deep and endure hardships that have tested you, but now, at long last, there are smooth seas ahead. What you've learned and how you've grown can never be taken from you. And now it's time to enjoy the warmth of the blessing that life has in store for you. Glorious new beginnings are now possible. I really resonate with that card. That's why I wanted to read it today. For myself, it really has to do with a lot of growth that I've gone through over the past 5 years since I moved to Vancouver Island just about 5 years ago now, or at least I was leaving London, Ontario at that time, and we were starting the road trip right about now. And I really needed change from my life in that area of the world, and I needed to explore and have a lot more adventure. And well, by about 6 months later, the world kind of flip flopped on its head. Some things that we don't need to bring up, but anyway. But I found myself going through a whole bunch of emotional hardship and working through a lot of inner pain and a lot of things that were stuck with me and everything. So at this point in my life, I feel like I've really changed and overcome. This past summer has just been so growing and revealing to me about my inner calling and what I'm meant to do and who I am and what I bring to the table and how I'm appreciated in this world. It's all these little things that are always there and mentioned, but to get a whole taste and feel of that and growth over a summer is just so impactful. And I'm going to get into all these stories over time. Don't worry at all. But back in London, I did actually have a podcast, and I called it Opening the Box. And it was about interviewing bands and musicians about what they do, what sparks joy. Sorry, Marie Kondo. And what really draws them to their style of music that they create, and why they do what they do, or a special story that they have to share with the fans, or touring stories, whatever, right? So I kind of like did 7 or 8 of them. It was awesome, and I wove their music into the background of the cast. And I also like to integrate something about mental health, so I asked, and sometime in the interview, like, how is music helping you with mental health, or how does it, yeah, like, how do you check in with yourself, and how was music a part of that in your life? Really loved doing those and having those conversations. And realistically, and as different podcasters say, when you are going through and investigating like that, you're actually kind of doing it for your own heart. I just thought, oh, I'm doing this because I'm interested in mental health and these conversations, and this is just what I like to think about, or I ask people and I like to get their stories and stuff. But really, if I'm going to be true to myself, it was really probably an inner quest to find how people are coping with things and what I can learn from them. um anyway, when I moved out west, the podcast really fell to the wayside. And when well March 2020 hit, there were no more bands coming through town to interview. Even though I moved to Victoria, um, nothing was happening anymore. Nothing. Like, part of what I used to do was, when a band would be coming into town and doing a show, then I would call them and ask them to do an interview before or after the show, and then that's how I would get a chance to interact with them and everything. So that project really fell to the wayside as everyone readjusted their worlds. But I did always like podcasting back then. But now I'm in a different place where, it's not just music that is the focus, but I really do love talking about, obviously, tea and spiritual arts. I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I work with a whole bunch of different things. It's hard to say really what I am or what I do, um, in any particular sense. But I also work in social services, and so that those kinds of things might come up also, for what I do. And yeah, just being able to communicate and be in touch with people is part of why I want to be doing interviews with them, at some point once I get there. Um, yeah, so I guess that's it for my oracle reading there. I'm feeling that sense of new beginnings and cleansing, and that I've gone through a whole bunch of change, and I'm ready to bring something new out into the world, and refreshing conversations, hopefully. Yeah, so I have over 3 years. I also wrote a whole bunch of poetry, and I made 3 poetry books, one for 2020, 2021, and 2022. So the first one is called Chaos of Tao. The second is Reverse Cycle Repeat. And the third is Emptiness of the Way. Um, well, I'm just going to hop into some stories, because that's just the direction I'm going to go. Um, well, so I finished all the poetry that I wrote in 2022. I finished editing and publishing the book by very much the end of 2023. I had to do it within the year frame. That was, I pushed my deadlines back and back, and then, oh yeah, so my deadline is June. My deadline is August. October? Okay. Before 2024. That became my deadline, and I think I think it was like December 29th when I got to finish it. uh, okay. Emptiness of the Way. Why would I choose a title like that? It was about, well, it was a way to do the exact same title in a sense as the first book, Chaos of Tao. So chaos is also source or emptiness, or void. So it can be this nothingness, right? Chaos is often referred to as everything going crazy and out of control, and how chaotic. But really, chaos, on the other hand, in other sense, is the complete opposite. It's actually the nothing, the source, the lack thereof. So then, and then the Tao, like in Buddhism, it means the way of nature, the way of how things work, simply put. So I wanted to do Emptiness of the Way for my third book as a sort of a callback, but also something kind of refreshing, and it's seen in the covers of the books. The first, Chaos of Tao, is very more dark. It's like the black circle of emptiness, um and like mulch and stuff on it, whereas the Emptiness of the Way is a lot more like it's just a clear blue sky with a little bit of the moon in it, in a cherry blossom tree. um the description on the book, I'm going to go ahead and just read that right now. I stumbled into the void and learned her name was Poetry. I've known her forever, really. Now she wanted to talk, so I listened. She asked me desperately to channel her words onto page, bring the sustenance of her soul into the physical plane. The challenge is that I'd never be prepared for what she would speak. Rather, I would never know, so it was best to prepare. Always have a journal and pen, phone with a built-in notepad, voice recorder if need be. Poetry arrives in bursts. Some distant dimension where it lives sends information when her timing is best. Poetry doesn't think like we do. She has her own agenda and is heard as a different voice by everyone. Her skill is finding people when the moment is right, when the medicine is needed. Yes, poetry is a healer. Well, I don't know what to add on to that other than what the words say for themselves. So in my practice of doing healing arts, poetry is just a large part of that as well. So if you listen to my first recording, I don't know if I would call it a podcast because it's only sort of 4 minutes and not quite Talking Basement anyway. If you listen to that first one, and it's titled "She is Poetry." It's basically like an extension of what I just read there and what's on the back of this book. So if you want a kind of expanded version of what I just read and what's on the back of Emptiness of the Way, then you can go ahead and listen to that. And speaking of tea, see, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that a lot. I'm going to read a poem from Emptiness of the Way, and it's called West Home Tea Experience. West Home is a tea garden on Vancouver Island out in like Duncan area. And it is just amazing. And it's just so amazing to see tea plants growing here and rows of them. Anyway, this poem is what that's about. Inhale deeply, inhale deeply, inhale deeply. Taking in the fresh bouquet rows of tea plants ahead, young yet evolved, splendid in their simple nature. Inhale deeply, inhale deeply, inhale deeply. One who knows tea served his homegrown to me. A humble servant of the leaf, he says. What wonder fills my chest. Inhale deeply, inhale deeply, inhale deeply. Smile. For today I drink from a vessel here designed bubbly character. This cup, bearing liquor of leaves plucked from plants looking right at me. This is joy. Inhale deeply, inhale deeply, inhale deeply. Heron's wake sits on the tongue, grasping for me to remember. Deep richness that sharpens from nostrils straight to my chest, lightens and comforts the eyes. Oh, I could go back there every day and drink tea, honestly. Actually, the funny thing was, when I first got to Vancouver Island, because I'm sort of on that topic, when I first got to the island, the place had a job posting for someone to run like the shop, the retail selling tea, or maybe even work in their cafe, 'cause they had that going. But I was so thrilled that the tea garden on Vancouver Island would be had a job posting. I'm like, I am so there. That is my job. That's a dream. I'm getting on the island. I'm going to get immersed with tea. I'm going, me amazing. So, I was staying somewhere a little more up island, and I was in Qualicum Beach. I got down to Nanaimo, and then I couldn't figure out how to get to Duncan or get to the sea farm. If I get a bus, maybe if I can get that bus and then I can get down there, and maybe, it's quite the trail, outside of, apart from any bus station or anything. I mean, so then I was just trying to hitch a ride. Can I hitch a ride? Can I get anything? It wasn't working. It wasn't working at all. So unfortunately, I had to call and say, I'm sorry, I can't make it. I can't make it for the interview. And then after that, I don't know how I'm going to actually get out there and live there or be there for the job. So, Victor was very kind and gracious, and was like, we'll cross paths in the future. That's all right. I'm like, okay, great. So that was in 2019, and a few years later in 2022, I actually got to get out to the garden and have a tour. Well, they do tours of the garden in the summer, and I was very lucky because I got there. Everyone else had canceled, didn't show up or whatever, so I got a private tea tour with Victor, and that was wonderful. Because when you really speak the tea language, it's just like such fluid, beautiful conversation, and so nice to talk about the terroir and talk tea plants. I got to pluck some leaves and just hold them, and it was beautiful. And he did remember me, the person who missed the interview but was very enthusiastic about going. That's good. You do something silly like that, but you make an impression. People remember you. Remember that. Anyway, you have good humor about it. They're especially going to remember your good spirit. I did see something actually just recently online that people don't remember. People don't always remember what you say. They don't always remember what you do or these different things, but they remember how you make them feel. So I don't know. I don't know what I did there, but oh. Gotta get myself out there soon. Get some more tea. Yeah, there's some fresh 2024 harvest that I need to get my hands on before it's gone. Hmm. Oh, I've had this cup of tea sitting here, and I have not really been drinking it. Just excuse me for a second. If you're put off by my slurping, then you should leave now. It's actually a very good thing to slurp your tea because then you are sending flavors and the water to different areas of your taste buds, and so you're taking in way more by slurping your tea in liquid than you are by just taking it down. So it's actually a practice to be slurping your tea. And, a bonus of that is that when your tea is really hot and it's hard to drink, when you're slurping, you're actually pulling in more air, so then it's coming in a lot smoother. So when your cup is way too hot, slurping is helpful for multiple reasons. So keep that in mind. That is my tip for you today. I'm going to read you another poem because I want to. Oh, look. Okay. Ooh. All right. Two poems. One's a tea poem, one's autumn equinox. Okay, I'm going to do autumn equinox because I flipped to that page. These are, weird, whatever. So again, this is for 2022. So it's autumn equinox, September 22nd, 2022 at 2:22. I wrote this one in a minute. All that remains of the eternal past shall be transformed and brought anew. The time has come to flip the days from long sunshine to the increasing dark. We shall begin to summon the energy of the cooler times of the year to reflect on where we've been and continue to become. And just to reference it right now, it's September 21st, so that's why it was important. Forgot to explain that part. Okay, I'll give you a second to think about it. Done. The next one on the next page is a tea poem, and it's called 2001 Yiwu Shupur. So it's an aged tea. I feel like I'm smelling the wisdom of books from an old man's library. My mind fills with wonder as I hold my cup with ease, standing still, meditating like destiny's always guided me. Sweet aged nectar, you wrinkle pain into my expression as you pull my heart into a smile. Forehead smooths into love, eyes shining like they've always seen the sun. Textured brown with muddy liquor, you are a marvel to see, an honor to greet. I carefully hold you to my lips. Chest relaxes as the beverage soothes my throat. Held still, impossible to spill, for some muscle memory wouldn't drop this cup for the world. I feel the medicine navigate my body, head, ears, spirit. Meditating feels invigorating. Joy in the absolute joy found within. I thank these dead leaves long preserved for the steep. The other special thing about having that tea was I got it inside of this woven bamboo basket. So inside of this basket, this tea had been aged, preserved for, sorry, how long was it? I probably got that one in like 2021. So like 20 years aged in this basket. And wow. So tea, it gets better with age. Especially when it's puer, whichever you want to call it, to differentiate from the word poor, like a poor person, or oh, poor thing, or pouring water out of a teapot. Yes. So traditionally, you get these kind of raw leaves, very barely processed. You stick them, you steam compress them into the cakes. That's what I was describing earlier. Those cake things, and then they age for some time. That's the one I said earlier that I'm drinking now. That was from 2013, so it has some characteristics. I'll never know how it was when it was first plucked, but then this like a richness that develops over time, and they all age differently depending on area in the world, climate, temperature, humidity, etc., etc. These all have these kinds of effects on the tea. So there's the raw kind, and that's a lot more earthy, can be more fruity and different stuff. So then the one that was in this poem is it's like a fermented style tea. So they wet pile the leaves and they give it heat and cool it down. Give it this whole fermentation process to, as they say, to age this, or sorry, speed up the aging process, and so it gets very dark within months rather than many years. Many years being like 20-30 years. Like it can take like they say that a fully ripe pour is 70 years old. That someday I would like to taste that. One day. And I don't think I'm going to be in Canada to be able to taste that. Yeah. So basically tea ages like champagne, or like wine and champagne. It's like Champagne country that tea or that pour comes from, an area in China called Yunnan, and then it ages like wine. There we go. All right, I'm going to go for one more poem. Yeah, I don't have somebody in front of me to help me choose. You want this one or this one? So I'm just going to read the next one. Cobweb of Truth. In the haunted house of the world I write, how the spider spins, it is surely a work of art. A spider has woven a web around my heart, tickled my pinky finger. The spider shows me the way to building the flower of life, connecting the dots, seeing a project to its completion, to the interconnectedness of my companions, wispy strings gluing it all together. I am the spider of mastery, weaving my web to perfection. Every past web gets torn apart, frayed, weathered, but this one I shall complete. This one will last. 8 legs of infinity, a fly caught in the web reminds us, being aware of death is a virtue. Release what was tainted in this twisted world of deceit. Find gratitude. That one is a special one to me. One, I do actually quite like spiders. And the idea of a cobweb and what spiders do is to be building the tapestry of life, and the universal strings that are creating sort of like a mandala and everything. So in the idea of seeing a project to its completion and weaving my web to perfection, the past webs get torn apart, frayed, but this one I shall complete. This one was me either in the process of or having just begun. I opened up a tea house and I ran that for a year. So that was an absolute dream that I needed to make happen, and I was making it happen. So that was a very exciting moment for me. And I really like the line, being aware of death is a virtue. I kind of that message sort of came to me. And I think that's quite a profound line, because while we go about life all the time, we don't always think about death, or maybe we do think about death when we're afraid of things, but we really think about death. And it's actually something I do think about quite a bit. But that it's a virtue is just, I don't know, it's just something that sits with me. I like to think about. So, it's it's always possible, right? And it's around us, and there's people that we love who are either sick or ill, and we have to prepare for it. So rather than being shocked or surprised or absolutely sad when death arrives so suddenly, or even in the long term, being aware of what it is in the cycle of life, I think is a virtue in that way. Of course, we're going to be sad when people that we love pass away. That's inevitable, and that's part of being human. That's part of how we express our love. Still, it's still nice to be reminded, I think. Maybe not for everybody, but that's how I like to think about it. And if that got a little bit dark, apologies. Yeah, I don't really apologize for talking about that kind of stuff. Better it comes from me than someone else, huh? But the way I arrange my poetry books and how I write them and put all the poems together, I'm really just putting it chronologically from beginning to end of the year. So, I was reading that off of page 77. So, and there's like 100 pages in the book. So that's we're actually getting into autumn time, and that was a couple poems after that autumn equinox poem. So, which is, it says September 22nd. September 22nd. Yes, I said that right. And so, we're entering into autumn now. And we're going to start seeing the fall. We're going to start seeing the changes. Leaves are falling off the trees. We are going to start seeing the landscape of death and descending upon us, and eventually we're going to see Halloween, which, yeah, no, I'm speaking of Halloween, I'm done apologizing for talking about dark things and death. Literally, it's an entire not holiday, but celebration of creepy, spooky things. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Is anybody else excited for that time of the year? Wipe away, say goodbye to the summer. I have been sad to say goodbye to the summer. It's I had absolutely fantastic one. I ended up going on a big road trip, and I was away from home for 3.5 months. And it was following my passion. It was just the intention was travel across the country and perform my poetry everywhere. And I did a fair amount of that, and I did a lot of other really cool adventures. And I'll get into talking about the Soul Circus sometime soon, because it was such a magical journey in my life. And so to come back home and be away from that and all these adventures that I was having, and now the weather's getting a bit cooler, there's a shift. I'm feeling the shift and the change. I'm sure a lot of people are starting to feel it too, as we're creeping into later September. We're going to start seeing October, and our emotional state is going to shift, and soon enough Port Alberni is just going to be under clouds constantly for many months, and a lot of rain. Yeah, that starts to have its effects. Definitely. But it's also really beautiful too. At least this is an area in the world where there's, in Canada, I should say, that has a lot less snow than other areas do. And I appreciate that. I do. Maybe if you want, while you're listening to this, just take a deep breath with me and feel the summer and everything you got out of it. And it might not have been a great summer for you. Everybody's experience is very different. But just take a deep breath and breathe in the summer and feel it in that warmth and the energy of the sun and the fire. And then release it and welcome in the fall. And another time. And once more. Third time's the charm. All right. I hope you take care, and looking forward to next time.